This conference will now be recorded.
If you're playing anything, we can't hear anything, guys. Okay. Uh, Thanks for that. So, first of all, thank you everyone for joining this demo today. Uh, Let me quickly present my screen and then we'll get started. Yep. Please confirm if you can hear me. Can you hear me? No audio, is it? Okay. Just give me a minute. I'm checking my audio.
Actually, it's working fine.
You're audible.
We are
Okay,
able to
great.
hear you well.
Yep, yep. Okay, so today we are going to, I'm going to deliver Azure Administrator demo. So this actually, I'll first set some expectations. We are only going to see, I'm only going to cover administrator stuff. What are the administrator, whatever the job or certification, this is going to be completely certification oriented. So whatever will be, covered in certification. So we'll cover the same. And also we'll try to, so this is mostly, I would say 70% demonstration, like, practical, 30% theoretical, because demonstration is something really important for you guys to actually do well in your job. So we will more focus on, most of the times you will see me uh, doing a demonstration. So, and very few, very, initially, yeah, yes, I'm going to cover a couple of theory, so a little bit of theory, but later on we'll mostly jump into demonstration. So this is about me. My name is Shankar, and I am AZ104 certified, and I am also a Microsoft certified trainer. And so I do a production support for Azure, and for a reputed product-based company. And I deal with like, high priority issues, high impact issues. So where almost 300 to 400, 500 users are impacted. So those kind of issues I deal on a daily basis. At least, 2 to 3 cases for sure I will deal on a daily basis for different environment. It is not just a single environment, for a different environment all over the globe. So that's about me. Yeah, before I get started, so in case if you guys have any doubts, questions, queries, you can always interrupt me, and you can feel free to ask me any questions. Just 2 minutes. Okay. Just give me a minute, please. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's first see what we are going to discuss. What this training is all about. Okay. So we have a lot of bunch of certifications from Microsoft, but we are going to cover Microsoft Azure certified Azure Administrator course. This is actually a 2-star, which is a specialist, not an expert level, but it's associate level training. So before this, you are also seeing some AZ900. So there is a myth, like most of the people who have actually approached me. So they ask me, should we actually prepare for this and attempt this, and then should we go for it? So I simply say that's not the way. So you really don't have to actually study this AZ900. You can directly jump into Azure Administrator. So this is just an optional course that if you really want to go for it, you can go for it, but it's not a mandatory one. So so that's about it. And you may ask me a question like, what kind of people will actually attempt this? Who this is for? So you said this is not required, but what this is for? So if you have a question like this, then what I would, my answer is very simple. Let's say you're working in some different field. Let's say you're working as some Python developer or something like that, but you also want to have some knowledge on Azure, not a depth knowledge, but just an overview about Azure. So when I say overview, it's like a tour of Azure. So let's say, let's consider an example as Ramoji Film City. So you go in a bus and you just visit Ramoji Film City and you come back. So it is just like that. AZ900 is going to give a complete tour of Azure products, services, compliance, and all the stuff, but just an overview, not a detailed. So you will not going to do much of practical, not going to do a deep dive. So you're just going to learn what is what and what products Microsoft provides. So this is like, if let's say there's a Python developer, he want to learn, he just want to have some idea on Azure, so that for him this is the right certification, because he's not going to work on Azure. He's still going to work on Python, but he's just having some knowledge on Azure. So that's how this is helpful, and not only for a developer, but also for a manager or for management, senior management, a CEO. So all those people who want to know about Azure, so they will go for this. And whoever learn this Azure fundamentals, most likely they will not actually, if you have this AZ900 in your resume, that is definitely not going to help, because so at least as you can see, it is 1 star. Definitely you must have at least a 2-star associate level certification in any of the field, because Azure provides a lot of certifications. AZ 500, 400, 303, 304. There are a lot of certifications. So this one, at least you must have a 2-star certification. If in case, if you want to be considered, if the interviewer has to be consider you, so you must have something, a 2-star certification in your resume. That will actually, it's not really mandatory that you must do a certification, but it will give some edge during the interview process. That's about it. All you have to have is knowledge. So that is important. This is about AZ900, and now we are completely focusing on this. Guys, in case if you can't hear me, if you see any problem in my delivery, in case if I'm going speed, and you can, if you do not have any clarity on any of the topic that I deliver, you can always feel free to interrupt me. Yep. So this is where we are right now. Let's say if we spend some time and we learned it, and we finished the certification, then the next goal for us will be this. So this is something will take some time. You actually have to have some practical experience, because this is not that easy. This includes 2 certifications, 303, 304. This is the architect level, so where you design entire environment and then hand it over to operation team, who will actually operate like a, so expert will build an environment and will hand it over to associate. So associate will actually take care of it, like administration or operation standpoint. And yeah, this is about the certifications. Anyone has any questions around
How
this?
much the certification cost of each of them, and how many attempts we can do in one-time fees?
Well, in case if you are in India, so the certification will cost you around 5,600 rupees. 4,800 plus tax, 800 some around. So you will be charged 5,600 rupees. And if you ask me for attempts, there is no limit on attempt, but there is some delay. Let's say you attempted one exam and you failed it, so you must wait for 3 months time to attempt another, again. So that's kind of a wait. In case, let's say you also fail the second attempt, so you will be again asked to wait for some 6 months time. So that is how it is going to work. But yeah, so in India it is 5,600, but in US it is 150 USD. So comparatively it is higher price in US. There is in case if any of you in this training, if they lost their job and due to this pandemic, and if they are in difficult situation, so Microsoft also providing a discount of almost 90% discount in a USD. So you will only have to pay 15 USD, which is close to 2,000 rupees. I think they will charge. So with the 2,000 rupees, you'll be able to finish certification, but that is only limited. Whoever apply first, they will get it. So at the end of this course, I'm going to show you that where you can actually apply and other stuff. So you can actually, in case if you're very serious about it, you can actually schedule the exam right away. And I mean, you will have a time, like you can schedule now for 2 months after as well. So for next 2 months after also, you can select a date and you can schedule it, so that you can plan accordingly and you can prepare well, and because you have some deadline there. So that is something I'm going to show you that at the end of this demo today. where actually you can get that 15 USD benefit. But again, as I said, it is limited. So in case if it's already full, so you may not get that benefit. But again, that is, I mean, the intention is to give some opportunity to people who actually impacted due to pandemics. That's a Microsoft intention. So, any other questions?
Yeah, hi Shankar, this is Srikram. I just joined now. Sorry if I missed something. So my question is that so now you're going to give the demo on the total administration, how it will be, or it's only the fundamentals. So actually, I'm from Windows and VMware background, so I want to learn the Azure administration to get a into the new career. So I just want to verify with you whether it is really helpful to me, or is there any other course that you can prefer for me?
No. So this is completely this will be helpful to you, because so what my approach here is, so let's say for this administrator there are a couple of prerequisites. In the sense, you must have some knowledge in advance. So in this demonstration we are going to cover that those basics first, and then we will jump into the demonstration, and then we'll jump into administrator actual course. So this demonstration is some like it is for everyone. So whoever, let's say if you don't know anything about Azure, still you will get something out of this demo. Even if you have already some good knowledge in Azure, it's kind of a brush up for you. It's kind of a brush up. We are going to see a couple of concepts, and then we will actually jump into administration. So this is actually exactly for you, Sai Kiran. If I have to answer your question, it is exactly for people like you, because most of my trainings people join with zero knowledge in Azure. So I will basically explain them from scratch.
Okay. So the duration
Yep.
will be later, or
Sorry, your voice is a little low. Can you speak a little louder?
yeah, sorry. So what I'm asking is the what is the duration of this course, and what are the contents will be covered?
Mm.
That's what.
So yeah, definitely I'm going to show that to you. Okay, since you asked, let me directly jump into the course contents. Okay, so this is a
Before
course
we
content
go,
that we
can I ask you a question?
yes, sure.
Yeah, right now I'm working as a DevOps engineer, and I have AWS Solution Architect certification. I like to do the one Azure stuff also. Which certification you suggest to me?
Okay, you already have DevOps knowledge, and
Yes.
you already have AWS solution architect as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, it depends on you which field actually you are interested in. Are you interested in development? Are you interested in support? Are you interested in architecting things? So
Yes.
if you can answer, yeah.
Support means which certification, and architect things, which one? Can you please suggest those
Okay,
two?
so yeah, so I have already discussed this, right? So this is a support, the one that we are discussing about. So this is where you actually, it's not only support. This is where, let's say, this is actually architect, a solution architect. This is equivalent to your AWS solution architect, and this is actually administrator. So here, let's say a solution architect does complete architect. This administrator will do a 50% of it, like a basic stuff, like installation of VMs and installation of storage accounts, virtual machines. Like popularly used services will be created and managed by administrator. Nowadays, administrator is doing a lot of job. Architect is basically, he will define. Let me quickly show you one architect that I have. So architecture looks like this. So what architect does is, so you will design an architecture for your environment. Let's say you want to start one startup company, and for that company, what are the components are required? So all that stuff, an architect will take care of it. So based on the organization, functionality, based what type of organization it is, so an architect will define the architecture. So then an administrator is going to create them and do the stuff.
Okay.
So for your answer, AWS solution architect is equivalent to your Azure solution this architect. But if you want to directly jump into this, because these administrator topics or whatever we discuss, these all topics will be included in this. So a couple of additional stuff will be there. So whatever we discuss in administration, so it's like this. Administrator is a common thing for most of the other certifications. So let's say even if you said you also have knowledge in DevOps. Okay, in DevOps, there is a certification for DevOps that is AZ 400. That certification includes 70% of admin stuff, for 30% of DevOps, Ansible, Jenkins, that stuff. And if you see this architect, I will say at least all these topics will be there in architect also. But apart from that, you will have some additional knowledge, additional labs, additional. You're going to go little a deep dive there.
Okay, this architect is aged 303.
Exactly. 303 and 304 both includes this certification. You have to finish both to get this solution architect badge.
Okay.
You have to complete two.
And we don't have any prerequisites, right, by doing this?
If you want to learn this directly, I would say, I mean, to get here, you must have some knowledge, practical knowledge on Azure. So that's the reason this is now the path actually. So it is always good to have some practical knowledge, because you will not be able to get here easily, because this is a tough one, is what I can say. This requires a practical knowledge.
Okay.
So in case if you want to take some risk and learn directly and attempt it, you are feel free to, you can definitely do it. At any time, you don't have any of these prerequisites here. Like, this is not mandatory even for architect. So this is just an optional again. So if you want to directly go for it, you can always go for it. But my suggestion is have some hands-on on Azure. Then it will be easy for you.
Okay. Yeah, and means you want me to do that? Is it 104?
Yeah, start from 04, then you can end at 304. Start from 104, then you can end at 304. 104, then 303, then 304. That is when you will become an architect for Azure. So that's a top level, expert level stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sai Kiran asked.
Shankar.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Shankar.
Yes.
This is Shekhar. I have 3 questions to add to whatever questions Naveen asked. I'm actually into legacy systems, mainframe assembler developer, now slowly transforming into the open system. And Azure is one of the things my product will be installed in. So I'm looking at what needs to be done. Like I would like to know how to set up a whatever architecture you have shown a few minutes before the slide. Like I would like to know details about those things, and then once the product is installed, I would need to be a support as well, like doing the production support as well. So in that case, what kind of certifications would you recommend? And also you said like we have to do 2 or 3 certifications if to reach there. So I understand like for each and every certification it could be $150, right?
No, that's a US charge. In case if you're in US, it is 150. If you're in India, each certification will cost you 5,600.
Okay, I'm currently in US actually. So that's it. Yeah. Okay. And what about the I told right what I want to do in Azure. What would be your suggestion? I don't have any knowledge, like I know very basic of C, Java. I'm assembler, pure assembler, mainframe assembler, JCL developer all these years. So now only moving on to, because the world is moving away from the old legacy systems, so I have to move on. So I have no knowledge on anything. C, I like basic knowledge in C and Java. That's it.
Yep. So this is again a good start for you. So same thing applies to you as well. You can start from here, an administrator, and then you can end at an architect, because you also want to, as I have shown the architecture, so you also want to build an architecture and then support that as well. So, but so that's kind of a reverse fashion. So, I mean, you are actually expecting to become an expert now and then later become a support. So that is not how it is going to work. So you first can become a support, because that is a medium specialist knowledge. So you can gain that knowledge, and you can become an
Okay.
architect.
Okay.
So
Okay. Sounds good.
for you, yeah, for you also, this is a good start. You can actually start with administrator, because it is whoever want to. So my simple suggestion is whoever want to transform to Azure without any knowledge on Azure, for them this is a good start, because it is not comparatively, if you look at other certification, it is not a tougher one, but at the same time it is not very easy one. It's a medium based where you will be able to understand concepts, and also you'll be able to do some practice, and you can easily clear the certification if you follow uh, uh, my course, and also if you do some labs, my demonstration, and also a little bit of homework whenever I give you. So if you follow that process, this is a good start for you. Once you get into Azure, then you can explore whatever you would like to. So let's say if you want to go to DevOps, you can go for it. If you want to go to architect, you can go for it. If you want to go to security, you can still go for it. In case if you want to go for developer also, you can go for it. So I would say this is a good start for you. And once you enter here, and since you already have your path, you also said you want to become an architect because you want to build the architecture. So then your path is already ready. So all you have to do is just learn and go for it. Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
Shankar.
I think yes, yeah.
Yeah, this is myself.
Shankar,
Yes.
Can
Please
I
go on.
talk?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah, myself, Bhargav. Currently, I'm working on WD hospital deployments. And I have seen your course topics. Almost 11 topics are there. In 11 topics, I know few of the topics like Azure monitoring, Active Directory, virtual networking, Azure virtual machines, and automation accounts, whatever it is. I know. Is this really help to me in future? Because I'm working on, I already said, I'm working on WD. I know user reviews and whatever it is.
Yes.
Is this really help to me?
So you're going to completely work on to WVD, or do you also have a plan to expand your knowledge and try to become an architect in future? Because WVD that itself is there is separate certification for WVD which is in beta right now, so will be soon available for live. But there is no end for it. When I say end for it, there is no next level for it. So do you want to stop there itself, or you want to actually progress your career and you want to move further and become an architect? Because architect is a top layer. Architect or DevOps, these two are top layers. They are expert level certifications. So that is something I will leave it to you, because if you want to stick with what you're doing right now, WVD, as you said, you already have knowledge on networking, monitoring, virtual machines, and automation and WVD. I'm aware of WVD as well. So then that is actually sufficient for you to do your current job. But in case if you want to progress your career, so that is if you're really thinking about progressing your career and try to progress this Azure knowledge and gain more knowledge and become an expert level in Azure, then I would suggest you to do another certification as well. That is what I mean. I'm not trying to I'm not saying that you just join this only, but I am saying you think about it, what you want to become. So what you want to achieve end of the day. So there should be some goal for you. So let's say I want to become an architect. That is a top layer for me. So if you think that way, then definitely you can start from here.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Actually, I want to know clear topics like an architect. So that's why I'm asking.
So
I want
as
to
you
be,
said, you also
I want to be an architect in Microsoft Azure. So,
okay. Then my suggestion is start from here. So since you have, I think 3-4 topics you already have some knowledge, but there are a couple more things. I think I'm not sure whether you have knowledge in ASR and Azure Backup. So that is something very important thing, because nowadays most of the organizations are asking for migration projects for an architect. So you must gain some knowledge here in this area. And also if you want to become an architect, you must gain some knowledge on inter-site connectivity, network traffic management, identity, and governance and compliance. These are the important stuff, I would say, because you already have the knowledge on this. That is really good. But you can because you already aware of Azure, so it is easy for you to learn this. It will not take much of your efforts. You can easily clear this, is what I can say.
Yeah, one
So
last
it's always
question.
good. Yeah.
Is there any certification, separate certification for WD?
Yes, it is. I said, I think the code number, I don't, it is something 120,
I'll
AZ
discuss
120.
with
Yeah, sure.
Vijaya after this.
Yep,
Thank you.
sure.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Naresh. I'm working in a backup administrator in which I have to monitor the various backups and give support to the client. So I want to switch in a cloud right now because currently I'm using the IBM tool, that is KSM Purely Storage Manager. So there is one topic in Azure, disaster and data recovery. Means, I search on the internet that will help me to switch my career in cloud technology. So
Yes,
I
okay.
just want to briefly in this topic means how it will help me to switch to my career in cloud.
Okay, so Nilesh, so to answer your question, I really understand that you want to just learn Azure Site Recovery, so which will help you in transforming to Azure. But what happens in Azure here is once you transform to Azure, so you will be asked to do a lot of other stuff apart from Site Recovery, because except top companies, top MNC companies, most of the companies will ask an administrator to not only a backup stuff, but also they will ask you to create a virtual machine,
Yeah.
storage, networking. Yeah. So for you as well, this is a good start because this includes Azure backup as well. So this doesn't this course does not have the migration stuff, but it has a backup stuff. But so what I can do for you, in case if you're looking for some additional knowledge or documentation around it, so I will try to share that with you, because migration is something is actually included in the architect, not in the administrator. An administrator doesn't do a migration, an architect will do it. So here you will see theory about Azure Site Recovery, and also I will try to cover the theory completely, and also I'll see if possible I'll also try to do some demonstration as well. So and backup, definitely we are going to completely learn theory and demo as well, practical as well. So this is again a good
So
start for you.
okay, so which certification is required for that? And
AZ104, you can
one
go
more.
for it.
Okay, and one more thing. Is this means when I searching to the job in Azure various field, so my previous experience will calculated in this or not?
Will be calculated. So yeah, will be calculated, because I would say it will be calculated, because you have
Means,
for this certification, if you see there is a prerequisite. Okay, let me show you that prerequisite. 1 second. Yeah. So this is a prerequisite.
no, means
What does yeah.
suppose I have done the 104 certification and the course. While I'm looking for a job change in Azure, so that company will calculate my previous experience. Means
Yes.
that does not happen that they consider me as a fresher. Means, that I don't want to.
No, actually, I have seen many people.
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen many people who actually learned Azure, although they have 5-6 years of experience, and they actually attended interviews. They are into companies, very nice companies with very nice package. So don't. I'm not sure. In case if you are in this dilemma or doubt, so don't be in the doubtful. So always there are opportunities, and Azure is completely growing in last 3 years. So you can actually just focus on learning, complete this, and try to attempt interviews, and definitely I'm sure within 3 to 6 months time you will get a new job in Azure. So there is no doubt about it,
Okay, and
and they will
what's the
consider your
validity of
previous
that?
experience as well. Mhm.
Okay, and what
Yeah.
is the validity of that?
Okay, so Nilesh, I'll take these questions later, and let's try to cover the content, and then we'll take these questions later at the end of probably. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So we have covered this, and now let's say you learn this Azure Administrator, and what will be the role that you're going to work? So that role is actually cloud administrator role. So once you complete this certification AZ-104, you will be most likely work on this role. What are the roles and responsibilities of you in this role will be, I will cover this slide at the end. As we move further, we will cover basics and then we'll get into Azure. Then I will cover this slide for you later. And coming to prerequisites, so what are the prerequisites that are required to actually come to this AZ-104? So you must have some basic knowledge into VMs. What are the VMs? Virtual networking, virtual hard disks, and also TCP/IP, IP address and other stuff. And DNS is one important thing. And virtual networks, firewalls, encryption technologies, and Azure Active Directory concepts such as users, groups, and role-based access control. And also some knowledge is required on disaster recovery and backup and restore operations. So here you really do not have to, because it says a successful administrator will have these prerequisites, but even if you do not have knowledge into this, you can still actually, because my session is going to cover these basics anyways. So theoretical knowledge will definitely help. We are going to cover that theory as well. So to start with, we will start with IP address. We'll try to first understand IP address stuff, and then we'll go to DNS, and then from there we'll take it further to cloud, on premises, and then we'll take it further to cloud. So first of all, what is an IP address? So that's so let's most of us already know, like, IP address will be enough. So all we know is that some number. So this is how it looks like, is what we know. But if you just drill down and see what exactly this IP address is, this is a decimal format. But basically this will be, if you convert it to binary, so you will see this octets will be in a so this is how the IP address looks like. But this an IP address looks like such a big binary, but it will be converted to decimal, and it will be shown with a so every 8 octets will be actually separated by a period and will be shown as a IP address for us. So this IP address has multiple classes, where we have class A, class B, class C, class D. So these classes actually for different requirements. So we are going to see those requirements here in the next slide. Why is this? Okay. So there are these are the classes that we have. So each class has there is certain IP range. So these classes are defined for a range of IPs. Let's say if you want to get more number of IPs in class A, you will get from 0. This starts from 0 to 127 IP range, and this will have almost such a huge number. So you will have, if you're running a large organization, you will most likely choose a class A. So that is how you will actually go for it. And class B something for a medium and small organizations, and medium organizations is what we can say. And class C something will provide a very less number of IPs, that is for a small organization, they will go for it. Class D and class E something we don't, will be used for broadcasting, and class D is something will be used for a defense purpose in a research, and government organizations will use this. So this is something cannot be used by a public. And let's see the special use addresses, like what are the, so you will see these special addresses most of the times in Azure are in your on-premises as well. So if you see an IP starting with 10, that is actually a private IP address. And if you see any IP with a 127, that is basically a loopback IP address. Loopback is something like, so you're starting from somewhere and you're again coming back to the same place. That is actually a loopback. And private network is something, again, this is something if you see something starting with 127 or 192, these are also will be used for private. So these basically will be used for local communication within a private network. And if you see IP in this range, most likely this is actually will be used for internet reserve. And 255 this subnet is actually, this is something actually completely limited. I mean, this is reserved for a broadcast purpose, as I've covered earlier. And coming to, let's see the DNS name hierarchy. So how does the DNS works or looks like? So this is actually DNS is completely this entry. This is will be managed by registration authority. There will be authority on a top layer who will manage actually. So this DNS will have let's say you have .com, .in, .org, .net, .int, or all this. These are all we call them as root domains. And under those domains, you will have this .coms. These are all called as root domains. Under these domains, you will have your organization, let's say Microsoft.com, Infosys.com, or any other organization. So, or else WhiteHouse.gov, Army.military. So these are all the domains that you will see. So for this is a top layer. This dot is a root domain. This is where this will be managed, and these domains entries will be available to authority. And all your records will be available. Let's say you actually your domain is something like okay, so let's say your domain is Microsoft.com, something like whitehouse.gov. Let's say your domain is something like this. Actually, there is something we don't know is there will be at the end of each domain, there will be one dot, which is invisible. You don't see that. So this is actually this, whatever you see, this dot is actually belongs to this. So this is a root. So this will be managed by an authority, and this is actually primary domain. And then this primary domain, this dot is a root domain. This is when and then under that you will have gov or adu other domains. So this dot is something will be there for all domains, but it is invisible. You don't see it. And then you have your Whitehouse. So let's say you have some records you want to build. If you want to have some DNS servers, so you'll have these DNS servers here. I mean, we are going to see that how a DNS lookup will actually work. I'm going to show that in the next slide. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So you, as I said, you have a root level domain, and then you have your .com, .edu, and .gov domains. And then you have Microsoft. Let's say your domain is Microsoft.com. So this is how the hierarchy looks like. Under Microsoft, in case if you want to have some other subdomain, then that is again you can have. So mydomain.microsoft.com. Then your domain will look like this, and you will have your DNS entries here. And Microsoft will have their DNS entries somewhere here, and the .com will have all these entries. Microsoft.com entries will be there in .com. Whatever the domain that you purchase with the .com, all the entries. When I say entries, the DNS entries, hostname records will be available here for that organization. Now we are going to see how a DNS query works actually. So let's say you're sitting somewhere here. You're trying to browse whitehouse.gov. From your laptop or desktop, wherever you're sitting. So what happens in the hood, under the hood? So first it will try to resolve the query. So when you send, because somewhere in the one second. So somewhere here there will be one server. There will be one server. That server will be handling your Whitehouse this server. So because this Whitehouse.gov is at the end of the day, it is actually a web server. That web server should be hosted on some platform, some platform, hardware, I would say a server. So let's consider this as a server, and this has on this server we have configured this website. Okay, when you configure this website for this server, we basically will assign an IP address, right? So that IP address will have a so for you to when you actually do when you do whitehouse.gov, when you try to browse it or try to resolve it, what happens? So it has to reach to this server. Only then you will get a response back, right? Only then you will get your website page. So how does it reach there? Because you're trying to connect with a web name, but your server most likely have an IP address, because all the machines will communicate via IP address, not with the names, right? So so how does it reach there? So first of all, it will try to resolve. So for let's say you are sitting on somewhere, you are connected to a broadband connection. So that broadband connector will have a DNS server. So they will first it will go ahead and check there, and if the entry for this Whitehouse hostname record, if it's found there, then it will directly go there. but most likely your broadband connection may not have that entry. So in that case, what it does, what your broadband DNS name server do, it will go ahead and try to, so whitehouse.gov, right? It will go ahead and try to search in dot server, name server, root server, and if it's find there, it will share it will send it back to us, and then you will directly have a connection to your server, right? You'll get your web page. Let's say if it's not available here also, this dot server is something is actually in this name server, so it will send it here, and then if you get a response from root server, it is well and good, you will go back. In case if you don't get a response in root server, then immediately as I said, you have this dot also here, then immediately it will check in gov name servers. So in this gov name servers, most likely you may see it, you may get a response of this whitehouse.gov. If you get a response in a gov, if you have a hostname record for this whitehouse.gov, you will get response. But in gov also, .gov will not have the hostname records of this domain, right? So this domain will have its own separate DNS entry. It will have its own separate DNS server, and that DNS will have a hostname record. So then again it will come back here. Again it will come back here to whitehouse.gov. So that is most likely this whitehouse.gov is kind of a domain registrar where you purchase your domain. That is where you actually assign the IP address. You will add a hostname record with this name to that IP address, so that then it will get the IP address back, and then you will get your connection established. So that is how the process actually works in a high overview. We are not going to see in depth, but I am trying to help you in understanding how actually DNS work in the backend. Okay. And let's see how a client and server will be communicated. So what is client first of all, and what is a server? That is something important, because client server, there is a difference. Client is something like you can take a mobile or a laptop or a desktop. These all will be considered as clients. And the server is something, it's a bigger machine. It has a lot of capability to a lot of stuff, and where clients can't do much stuff. Clients, first of all, clients cannot communicate over network. Clients can only, a single user can log into it, and at a time, even if another user is connecting, the previous user will disconnect back again. So that is how a client works. So where it's a machine that has some resources. Client is a machine that has some resources, but only can do a limited stuff. But when you look at a server on the other side, so server has a lot of roles, where it can act as a web server, it can act as a file server, it can act as a various different role, Active Directory or DNS or DHCP. So there are multiple roles a server can do. So these are all different server functionalities. Server can actually perform. Multiple users can connect to it, and server can communicate via network. That is another thing. And server is going to give some any functionality or any features or role, let's say Active Directory domain or DNS entries or DHCP IP assignment on the web or a web server. Those are going to be provided to clients by server. As I've already mentioned, server client is not very powerful one, and it can be used outside a network, like where you don't you can use your laptop even if you don't have internet, right? So I was talking about that. And it cannot operate on a network. So let's say if you want to connect to your desktop from some other network, so it is not going to operate that way. So although it is possible, but that's not, you will not achieve what you really want to achieve with while connecting to the network. Now let's see the on-prem architecture. So because now we have learned what is the IP address, how IP address is useful. Basically, for any machine in any environment, to connect to another machine, so it needs an IP address. Be it let's say in case if it is connecting to internet, it must have an IP address. Be it your smartwatch, be it your smart TV or a smart refrigerator, any smart devices that are connecting to internet already have an IP address. Your mobile, your laptop, everything. So now, and also we have discussed about DNS, right? So now we are going to see on-prem server architecture, how it is going to be. So typically in a data center, so you will have a data center. So this is like a data center. You first of all you rent a real estate. In case if you already own it, so it's well and good. In case if you don't own, so you rent some building. You rent some building, and inside a building you will purchase these racks. And in this is like a yeah. Okay, you'll purchase a rack, and inside a rack you will insert all the servers. These servers you will purchase those server hardwares. Server hardware includes and most of the times we already
Shrika, you are not audible.
am I audible now? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Typically, as I said, this when if you look at a data center, so what let's say a person is starting an organization, and he needs some 2 to 3 applications to be built, and out of 2 3 he have one web application, one mobile application, kind of a requirement for him. So in typical, like if you look at 15-20 years old, what we used to do, we first of all we will rent one building, and inside a building you then once you rent a building, then you purchase the hardware. Just like you purchase your laptop or desktop, you will look at a configuration, right? CPU, what is the CPU, how much RAM you want, how much hard disk, whether you're going to use SSD or HDD, all that stuff. You will see all the requirements, and you will purchase the hardware. So in because of the space, requirements, because it is if you, I mean, an organization can have 20-30 servers, right? If you assemble all 20-30 servers on a floor, then definitely it is going to occupy a lot of space. So because of that reason, this racks concept has come. So in racks, in each rack you will have a separate one server, and this will actually help in saving some space, and also the connectivity also will be easier. So let's say if you want to connect some network LAN cables, you will be able to connect it easier. So that is how this racks concept has come. And on top of each rack you will have a TOR, the top of rack. So this top of rack, this is where you will insert your switches, like switches for connectivity. So LAN switches or storage, fiber channel switch if you want to connect to it. So this is how a typical on-premises server looks like. On server will have a connectivity something like that. Let's say you will have some switches. I mean, in a floor, definitely, because when I say switches, these are all most likely related to a network switches. So what a network switch does, so you will actually so this rack will have an internet connectivity via something like this. That too again depends if it is allowed. So you will have some like this, and so you will have internet connectivity something like this. At the same time, I have not shown this shown a storage here, but a storage again will be a separate server. That storage will get the storage, like you will purchase a storage from Dell EMC or any other NetApp or any other storage organizations. Vendors, you will purchase the storage, like they will sell it like 10 TB, 10 terabyte or 15 terabyte, something like that. So you will insert you will actually you will have a switch again for these, and you will connect those using this fiber channel. You will first connect to it, and then from here you will connect to the servers. So that is how your storage and network. So mostly, I mean, an infra mostly consists a compute, which is a CPU, memory, and then a storage, which is hard disk. You'll have HDD or SSD, but it's a storage what you store on it. And then you'll have a network. So these are the important aspects of an infra. So because these are really important, while we move further, we are mainly going to cover, discuss about those network, storage, and compute. Now let us see a similar on-prem architecture, but in a different fashion. So an on-prem can also look like this. So where you can have a single storage connectivity, one storage can actually is connected to three separate different servers. So this is also possible. On the other side, you can also have a single box. That single box has three separate. This is an example for Nutanix. So in case if you're already aware, if you do not have a, while I am delivering, if you're not aware of any of the terms, don't worry. These we are just trying to cover. We are just trying to cover the basics of it. We have not entered the Azure, so don't worry. Soon we'll get into Azure as well. So and this can look like this also, where you have a separate storage for each of these, and you have a network and separate compute power, CPU, memory. So in either way, so it can, I mean, in on-prem, it is completely up to you. How do you want to set it up? Whether you want to set up a single storage and then connect it all the servers, or you want to connect to multiple storages and then have it in a single box. Now we are now slowly transitioning from on-prem to Azure. Why are we transitioning from on-prem to Azure? That is important question, right? So in 20 years back, all the environment or infra is in on-prem, but now most of the infra, so a lot of infra is already migrated to Azure. So what is the reason? So that for that reason, we are going to see cloud benefits in the next slides. I'm going to cover that there. So in on-prem, so let's say you have some setup like this. So the similar setup, you're going to migrate it to Azure. So once you migrate to Azure, this is how it looks like. You will have a virtual machine. You'll have a virtual machine, and that virtual machine will have a data storage connected. That storage will look like this. Storage connected, each data separate disks. But again, the storage also is coming from a storage server, like in on-premises. Even in public cloud in Azure also, you will have a storage server that is connected. So your disks are directly coming from there. But here what happens is, these disks doesn't not only will come to you. Let's say if there is some customer created this VM, these disks have come. Another Y customer created another VM. So at the same time, let's say this is of 10 TB storage. These disks altogether maybe 2 TB. There is still 8 TB left, right? So Microsoft will give another whatever requested by other customer. They will actually give another disk also. So this is a pool environment. It's not a dedicated environment for you. This is kind of a shared environment. So where there are pool of resources, and they will be shared across customers. So that is actually a public concept. And you will have components such as this. Network is connected via NIC. This is called network interface card. Even on your laptop, if you go to network properties, you will see the NIC. For every device, you will have that NIC. Every machine, Windows or Linux, any machine, you will have this NIC connectivity. And the public IP is something is required for an internet connectivity. So you must have a public IP address. And these concepts, what is resource group? Resource group is basically a container. It's like a container, logical container. It contains all the resources. So you can, for now, you can understand it like this. But while we move further, the definition I am going to cover in detail. And a virtual network is something, a network, it's an isolation of a network where other devices outside this network cannot actually communicate. Let's say there is some request coming from here, so it is not allowed by default. So you must create some NSG. This is the lock that you're seeing here. This is a NSG, we call it network security group, we call it as. So this is where it's like a firewall in your Windows machine, or it's just like a firewall, but not exactly the same. But this is where you set some rules to allow. Let's say there is some request coming from internet. So by default, it is denied. You have to create a rule stating allow, then it will be allowed. So, and every machine will have this temp disk. So while this storage is coming from a storage server, a storage pool, we call it a storage cluster. And this temp drive doesn't come from the storage pool. Instead, it comes from directly a physical SSD host. So when I say physical SSD host, actually this entire VM is sitting on top of this hardware. So sitting on top of this hardware. So when this is sitting on top of this hardware already have some disk, maybe 10 TB, 20 TB. Out of 10, 20 TB, this hardware will allocate some temporary drive for this every VM, not only for this VM, whatever the VM sitting on top of this hardware, it will actually allocate some memory for it. Why? Because to improve some performance, because this will be much faster compared to this, because these are connected via fiber channel, kind of a cables. So while the data is flowing via cables, comparatively this is directly attached to it, this will be much comparatively faster than this. So this is actually, we call it as temp drive, because we don't suggest anyone to use any permanent data, because there are chances that you can lose the data, because let's say there is some problem happened with a physical host. So there is a mechanism in the backend, your VM will be failed over to another host. In that case, your temp drive is actually allocated, is actually coming from your host, right? So it cannot actually move to another host. So on another host, you will get another temp drive, but this data is lost. So that is the reason you can only store a page file or a temporary cache information for to improve the performance. But otherwise, these disks you can use to store any data. This is a high level of basic virtual machine architect. So we are going to create a similar setup now. At the end of this demonstration, I'm going to show, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you, we are going to create the same thing in Azure portal. So please wait till the end, because a lot of topics to be covered. So do not conclude anything right now.
Can we ask a question, or at the end we can take?
Yeah, I'll take a couple of questions in the mid. Maybe after 5-10 minutes, we'll take a couple of questions, and then at the end we'll take remaining questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So now as we have discussed this migration stuff, on-prem versus Azure, how on-prem looks like, how Azure looks like. Now let's say if you want to migrate it, how will you migrate it? So in this is basically this is an Azure. So you will have some servers in on-prem. So first of all, this is completely a strategic movement. Like you actually, first of all, you study the environment, study your on-prem environment. First of all, where is this? Okay. First of all, you study the on-prem environment, and then you prepare your on-prem environment, because there are a couple of things to be installed to actually migrate it to Azure. You prepare the on-prem environment, then you validate the move, whether it can be moved or not. Will there be any errors that you can see? So you initiate a validate. That is just a validation, not a commit or abort. So in the validation, it does show what kind of errors, in case if there are any errors, it does show all the errors. Then you will have an option to move directly. So either move, you have an option like commit or abort. So if you commit, it will be migrated. If you abort, it will be there itself disconnected. So this is how a typical migration looks like. I'm just trying to we are slowly transitioning from first of all, we try to understand the basics of it, server, IP address, DNS, and how a server architecture looks like, and then client servers, and then on-prem, and then slowly we are trying to transition to Azure. Now we are just discussed how we can actually migrate it. Now in the next slides will be completely about cloud computing. So what is cloud computing, first of all? So cloud computing, anyone want to answer this question? Okay. Yeah, so that is fine. So cloud computing is a delivery of compute services over internet, enabling faster innovation and flexible resources and economies of scale. Because so this is I've also discussed earlier, there are three things that are really important. I said compute, network, and storage. So these three things will come, these are very important in Azure. So when I say compute, CPU, memory is what I'm referring to. In network, IP address and connectivity is what we are referring. In storage, we are discussing about hard disks, the hard disk that we have. For your laptop, you'll have these three things, right? These three things we'll cover. So a cloud computing is nothing but delivering of these services over an internet, and enabling faster innovation and flexible resources and economies of scale. So what does this mean? So we are just renting these services via internet to other customers, so that those customers can make use of these resources, and they can enable faster innovation instead of focusing on the hardware or infra on their side, they can focus on a faster innovation, and they will be able to get flexible resources as and when needed. If they want one, they'll get one. If they want two, three, so whatever the requirement they have, they will be able to get all the resources. And at the economies of scale, you're not going to pay huge amount as an investment. You're only going to pay on whatever pay that we call it as a pay as you go model. Whatever you use, you will pay for that. Let's say it's just like a postpaid. So you first you will use your mobile phone, and based on whatever you use, at the end of the month you will get a bill and you will pay that. And that is how it is going to be. So you will get all these on a rental basis. Just to actually give a better example for you, let's say you have a car, okay, and that car, if you purchase, you will make an initial investment, maybe 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, right? So that's the initial investment, and ongoing you will definitely use it, and while using it, you will do normal maintenance. That maintenance will be very small, and it's maybe you're going to spend very less amount on maintenance. But on the other side, let's take a Zoom car. You have a Zoom car, you rent a Zoom car, and you use it. So once you use it, you will come back and you will pay whatever the amount that is billed. So it's something like you are renting. So here in Azure Cloud Computing, so let's consider an example as a startup company. So an IITian has come out of college. He want to start his own organization, maybe startup. Not only IITian, anyone whoever want to start a startup. So let's say he started a startup, and he has some thought, and he started a startup. And that startup actually he has a thought, he started startup, but for that he needs some servers, a website. Let's say nowadays every organization have some websites, right? To actually run a website, you actually need some hosting environment. When I call it as hosting environment, these are all the resources required: compute, network, storage, all together. And also there are a couple of additional servers like a Windows server, server operating system. All that stuff is required to actually create a web server. So to handle the web server, again, you need some IT technician who is expertise in that area. So a company has to, first of all, to store this server, they need some cooling environment where it has to be little AC. If you guys have studied in your BTech college, you might have seen a single room, a very small room where it is completely AC, and you will have some. You might have seen some computer like a CPU like structure there. So that's a server. So you any organization must have a place like that, and also should have that cooling mechanism. And then they can purchase the hardware, which will cost you about 5-10 lakhs. And then once they purchase, they will recruit some 1 or 2 IT members. Then they will get it installed, and they will configure the web server. And finally, they will have their own website ready. So by the time they have their own website ready, they might have already spent some 20 lakhs, which is a huge investment. So there will be pressure on the organization now, startup. So we have spent 20 lakhs. When we are going to recover it? Then so that is when startup organization will be under huge pressure. And if they don't get in a first quarter, if they don't get in a good results, then they will be in a defensive mode instead of being in an aggressive mode, right? So to avoid all this kind of situation, let's consider same example with the cloud computing. You want to build in earlier case, it will take at least 2 months time to build a website. Now let's see in a cloud computing case. So if you want to create a website on a same day or same hour or same moment, you can go to portal.azure.com, which is Azure website, and all you have to do is, if you have a credit card, you can simply subscribe for it. And the moment you subscribe, you will of course get a free credits of 14,500 rupees in advance. You will get in return. And then immediately, if you have some expertise in a web server, even if you don't have expert, you can create a basic one. But if you need to create a exact nice one, then you might need to recruit someone who can actually build it. So if you recruit them, within a few days time, you will have your website ready. And at the end of at that moment, you're not even paying any money. All you will do, maybe if someone is creating some website, you will only pay for them. And in return, for first 28 days, you will get 14,500 rupees from Microsoft itself. After end of the first month, you're going to convert it to pay as you go. Then on a monthly basis, after second month end, you will get your bill somewhere around based on your computer resource. The bill will be less than 5,000, 10,000 rupees. So a startup organization who starts with a new idea, do you think they will have high pressure if they actually host a website in cloud? So that is a huge benefit they'll get. That is the reason most of the organizations are moving to Azure. So that is when we all administrators have a lot of opportunities. I'm going to show something which actually explains what is the demand for Azure. So you can see a demand. So this is where Azure AWS. Yeah, a lot of people say I also know AWS. So I also have good opportunities. Yes, I agree. AWS has been there in this market for a long time. They have come somewhere around 2006, I believe. So they are in this market since long time. But Azure has come lately, like 2010. So if you see the growth of the Azure, so what you see here is a growth of Azure. The number of opportunities for Azure. So it is pretty sweep scale that you're seeing. So from 2017 to 2019, the opportunities, you can see it. So it is almost the opportunities increased by 58% compared to this is higher than even other cloud skills or AWS. So opportunities have grown like anything for Azure, and this has not stopped here. Still, it is growing. So that is when we all have an opportunity. The faster we learn, the faster we get a good opportunity. And let's see last 10 months itself. So last 10 months, last 1 year itself. If you see last 1 year, all cloud jobs like AWS or cloud, any other cloud, they have actually decreased down. They are down. Cloud skills jobs are down by 30%, and AWS skills were down by 17%. But whereas Azure is up by 15% in past 1 year. So I'm just trying to give some insights because you are in a right place. What you really want to learn, Azure Administrator is a right option for you to learn. Yes. So far, anyone has any questions before I move further?
Yes, a few questions. So in this course, you'll be covering a little bit on the hypervisor configuration as well, because some kind of a hostings need the physical machine, USB port accessing for certain solution development. So that kind of a pitching is there, or that's out of?
Yeah, Hyper-V is something, Hyper-V is completely related to on-premises. So, but in Azure we have something called nested environment, but that nested environment is something will not be covered here. But what I can do for you, I can share an article which actually talks about it.
Okay. And yeah, I think one more question. This course is having the Kubernetes topic. So how much detail are we going to talk about it in this course?
Kubernetes, we are going to do actually a lab as well. So we are going to cover theory and also practical as well.
Okay. Yeah, one last question. This OpenStack is there, right? So how is it is it useful, or the private, the enterprise solution like Azure AWS only will have to go? Because some people says that OpenStack is also free to use and it will save the cost and also. How is it?
OpenStack is, are you referring to Azure Stack?
OpenStack is it's a public cloud where it's providing the infrastructure solutions, I think. So
there is no nothing as such, because public clouds that we know is AWS, Azure, GCP, and Alibaba Cloud. These are the clouds that are in use right now. I think you're referring to a stack that is actually we call it as Azure Stack. That is something a private solution. So private cloud solution that is more likely a VMware vSphere setup. So if you have your own data center, and then you can go for that.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So this is the best thing is what I can suggest. You can, a better thing is to learn this is what I can suggest.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on further. And if you guys have any other questions, we'll take it up later. So top benefits of cloud computing I'm going to cover. So what are the top benefits? As I have discussed, I've given example to you. So cost is something is a benefit. Global scale is something. Let's say you created a website here in Hyderabad, and if you want to create another website in US, so without actually purchasing any infrastructure or a rent, any building or anything as such, purchasing any hardware, you can directly create sitting here in Hyderabad, you can create a website in US. So it is that easy. So global scale is possible. Wherever you want to create, you can create a website. Performance is much faster. So because Azure uses the latest hardware on the backend, so the performance will be much faster. And security, Azure, not only Azure, any top organizations, public cloud organizations, they will invest huge money into security. So security will be top priority for all the organizations. And the speed. So the speed is something. There are two things we can think. Speed, the amount of time that you spend to create a virtual machine. As I have already given an example, right? So it hardly just took. It will take some around few minutes to create a virtual machine. But if you look at a 20 years old, if you have to create one virtual machine, it would take at least weeks, because you have to get an approval for the money, then you purchase the hardware, you install the OS and configure it, then finally it will be ready. So that will take a lot of process, and will take about close to few weeks time. And by the time you already have installed invested some around 10 lakh rupees. But in Azure, trust me, if you create a virtual machine, you can even use it for 1 hour. For 1 hour, you know how much it charges? Only 4 to 5 rupees, less than 10 rupees. It depends on how big is the VM. But if you use normal VM, less than 10 rupees. Within 1 hour, you can delete the VM. You're only paying 10 rupees. So that easy Azure is. Not only Azure, this is applicable to all public clouds. Yeah, the productivity is something you don't have to worry about much, because all you have to do, just create a VM and enjoy it. Start using it and build your own business. You don't have to worry about the backend hardware. So in on-premises, you will have a worry. Okay, let's say some hardware failure happened, hard disk failed, then okay, so you have to get it replaced and you have to build it again, the stuff. But in Azure, Microsoft will take care of everything, so you don't have to worry about anything. So even if the hardware, so they will ensure that none of the hardware, your data, your VM is highly available. There will be very certain situations where it can go down, but still Microsoft will assure that they will bring it back online as soon as possible. And coming to reliability, so reliability is another important thing. So Microsoft has a lot of practices like data backup and disaster recovery, business continuity. So these are all things they have already in place. With these, your data, if you enable replication, your data will be replicated to another region. Okay, so now there are 3 types of clouds. We are going to cover those clouds one by one. Public cloud is something, by now you might already aware of what is public cloud. Public cloud is something, a cloud actually, it is owned by a cloud services or a hosting provider. Let's say AWS, Amazon, GCP, or Alibaba. It's owned by a public cloud vendor and will be provided to the customers. What will be provided? Compute resources or network or storage services will be provided to customer on a rental basis. So that is actually called a cloud. So it's basically, there is no limit. Cloud is something, I can say it's a general public use stuff. So anyone who has a credit card, who has money, so they can actually purchase it and use it. So it's as simple as that. Coming to private cloud is something limited to your own buildings. Let's say this is a building that you own. Inside your building, you will have some servers set up. So these servers are limited to only you, because let's say some ex-customer want to access it, he cannot access, because this is your on-premises, this is your building, and your servers only limited to you. This is actually called private cloud. Coming to hybrid cloud, let's say you already own a building and you already have some 10 servers in your building, but you want to you had a requirement to create another 10 servers. Those 10 servers, for those 10 servers, you don't have a capacity, or you don't have money, or you don't have infrastructure here in your building, then you can think of about cloud, and you can create remaining 10 in a cloud. So you have 10 servers in your on-premises, which is a private cloud, 10 services in a public cloud. So when combination of these two is called as hybrid cloud. Let's see the cloud model comparison. So in public cloud, you'll have no capital required. You don't have to invest much. And applications can be quickly provisioned and deprovisioned, and organizations pay only for what they use. And in private cloud, you have to invest on hardware, and you have the complete control over the resources and security. You are the responsibility for it, and the organizations are responsible for hardware maintenance and hardware. So here you need some investment, you need some team to manage your hardware. In the hybrid cloud, this is more like a flexibility. These two, including these two, is called hybrid cloud, where you do some investment in private cloud and also you use public cloud. This is a combination of it. And we'll see capital expenditure is something I have already covered in example. So Azure cloud models, there are three types of clouds. There are IaaS and PaaS and SaaS. So we are going to see IaaS. What is IaaS? So IaaS is something like providing compute resources as a rental basis is called IaaS, like wherein you have so IaaS is something like this. So this is your on-premises. This is your on-premises where you have storage, network, compute, virtual machine, operating system, runtime, applications, and data. So all these things, whatever you see in green, that you are responsible, because this is private cloud. This building is owned by you. These servers are owned by you. So you are responsible for everything. But wherein this is cloud, in cloud, let's say whatever you see in blue for IaaS, these will be managed by Microsoft. Compute, networking, storage will be managed by Microsoft. In the virtual machine, operating system, runtime, application, these will be managed by us, customers. As you move to PaaS, so only applications and data. So for this, the best example is a virtual machine is the best example. Now in the PaaS, all these things till runtime will be managed by Microsoft, and only these two, applications and data, will be managed by customers. For this, the best example is a web app, a web application website, where only you manage application and data. And so, SaaS, in SaaS, until application, everything will be managed by Microsoft. Only data will be managed by customers. So this is where this SaaS, the best example for this is a O365 or Gmail. Any access, any application that you are using in Google Play Store, they're all SaaS. So this is actually about the three different models. Now let's see the regions. How big Microsoft actually built the regions. How many regions that Microsoft has? So Microsoft has close to 60 plus regions all over the world, and these 60 plus regions are actually spreading across 140 countries. So this is the highest number of regions compared to any other cloud provider. If you look at AWS has 25 regions, and GCP has less than that. Azure has 60 plus regions, which is higher compared to any other cloud competitor. These regions, the idea here is wherever you need a resource, let's say you need something in India, you will create a resource in India. If you need something in US, you create there. If you need something in Australia, you can create it. So you have lots of flexibility and scale. Wherever you need, you can go ahead and create it. This is AWS geography. So if you look at AWS, you can count on these numbers. Probably these will be somewhere around 20 to 25 regions. So these comparatively less number of regions to Azure. And every region will be paired with another region in Azure. So every region, each region will be paired with another region. Let's say here you have something like India South is paired with India Central. India South is actually hosted in Chennai. India Central is hosted in Pune. So these two will be paired. Why they are paired? Because Microsoft will give a high priority for disaster recovery. So when I say disaster recovery, let's say there is some natural disaster happened in India South in Chennai. So customers who have enabled disaster recovery, so Microsoft will ensure that that environment will be built online, bought online on India Central. So because of that reason, these two regions will be paired. But the advantage here, you might ask, can I pair this region with another region in East Asia, another country? East Asia is Hong Kong. So if you ask, then yes, it is possible, but the speed connectivity, you will not have high speed connectivity. Let's say you have 100 GB data here, sitting here. If you want to migrate, if you want to move 100 GB data from here to there, then it is going to take hours and hours, and your replication will never finish. But instead, if you choose these two regions, these two paired regions will have high speed connectivity, and your replication will be faster. You will have 2 copies of data within less time. So that's the idea here. And coming to availability options, let's say you have a single virtual machine, you have availability. This is called SLA. If you remember, we called SLA something like service level agreement. when any organization is coming to Azure, they will actually have to sign up, because Microsoft has to sign up for service level agreement. Both companies will agree for something and they will sign for it. So what does they do in the sign? So they, let's say Microsoft is saying 99.9% SLA for this virtual machine, single virtual machine, which means they're actually saying that your virtual machine 99.9, this is what. So on a monthly basis, your virtual machine cannot go down more than 43 minutes in a month. So in a month, it cannot go down more than 43 minutes. In case if it goes down more than 43 minutes, so other company has a right to take any action. But what Microsoft does is, in case if any of the VM goes beyond it, Microsoft will give lots of discounts on the VM. Whatever let's say you're going to pay 10,000 rupees for the VM on a monthly basis. If this SLA is missed, then Microsoft will give some discount, like 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees discount they'll provide. So if you want to improve this availability SLA, there are options like availability zones and region pairs. Region pairs we have just covered here, right? So region pairs, these options, if you go for, you will have a 99.99%. So with 99.99%, how much you're getting? 4 minutes in a month. In a month, your VM cannot go down more than 4 minutes. So that is very highly available. So hardly 4 minutes downtime. Something really nice, right? When you hear it. So this is how SLA will be calculated and will be made agreed to all customers, because customers will not get trust that easily, right? So they have to understand everything, and they need to know all the consequences. Only then they will migrate. For your information, Fortune 500 companies, out of Fortune 500 companies, 90% companies are already in Azure. So that is, where is that slide? Yeah. So if you see, out of Fortune 500 companies, 95% of companies are already in Azure. So you can look at the companies that are already in Azure. So there are a lot of opportunities for Azure, is what I can say. Give me 10-15 minutes, guys. We are almost over. We are just going to do a demonstration. So we are going to. I have a small project. We are just going to build that project in a practical. It will take 10-15 minutes time. And what are the management tools that we can use in Azure? So management tools that we can use in Azure. So the first thing, primary thing, we actually manage stuff via portal, Azure portal. So portal address is portal.azure.com that I'm going to show you in a demonstration. And you also can manage with the Azure PowerShell. So if you're not aware of PowerShell is a built-in tool in Windows machines. So inside of PowerShell, you have some modules called packages. You need to install that module, Azure module, then you will be able to use it. And you can also manage it using yeah, you can also manage it using a mobile app. You also have a Azure mobile app that you can use to create manage the services. You have a Azure CLI. This is basically this has a Python installed, so you'll use it a bash basically. So this is basically for developers, whoever is comfortable with bash. Someone is asking to close it. Please give me 15 minutes time. I think Kerry Righty. Okay. Okay. So this is something. CLI is something is for developers. We use developers will basically use it, and we also have a Cloud Shell, which is a web-based tool. So, and we have a REST API and ARM. So these all will communicate with ARM and to use it. Since we are running out of time, let us directly jump into Azure portal and do some demonstration. So this is an architecture that I'm referring to, a small project kind of, where we need to set up a VM and with the 3 disks and a storage account and a resource group. So how do we do it? Let us do this in a Azure portal quickly. I think it is going to take 10 more minutes. That's all. Just give me a minute. Let me present my screen. Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to connect to my VM. That's fine. So let me take a private window, connect from here directly. So the portal that you can connect is portal.azure.com. So this is a portal that. So in the while this is going on, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I can answer parallelly. Hello. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, this is Srinivas. Are you going to cover migrations, something kind of real-time migrations on premises to cloud?
Migrations is out of scope to this, but we are going to cover ASR in a theory basis, but not practically, I would say.
Okay.
What would be the
So when I say
duration of the course? Sorry,
it is actually. I mean, to finish the first question. So sorry. To finish the first question, we are going to cover not exactly a practical migration stuff, but we are going to cover a theory basis. And for second question, yeah, please go on for second question. The duration is, I think 40 days is what? So every day 1 hour, Monday to Friday. Saturday, if in case if you miss any day on a weekdays, I might ask for a Saturday as well. But Sunday there's no training. So every day 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes time, and will be for 40 days. That's the plan. So 40 days including Saturday, Sundays is what we are saying. I mean 1 month 10 days is the deadline. 30 hours duration is the course.
Okay.
So now that
we'll be covering all the services or only the part of few services which will be on which will cover up to 14,000, or how is it like? Because some services are really important, but which may not be fulfilled within the allotted budget. So what are we going to?
Can you name any one service that is not in the budget? I mean, I just want to understand.
In generally in AWS, the AWS course, it was happened like that. Only the free services have been discussed and paid services. They told this is a concept, just go and explore with your own budget, like that. It was told. So that's why.
Okay. So to answer your question, so we are going to cover all these. So including paid service also. So we'll cover each and everything. Because for me it doesn't matter free or paid, so I have my own subscription, so I will cover each and every service in a demonstration.
That's great, thank you.
Yep. So I have now we have just logged into Azure portal. So this is how portal looks like. Just in a minute we'll quickly look at the tour. So there is something, as and when anyone logs in, the first there will be something like a launch it, this tour will be available. Let's quickly show you tour. So when you click on tour, this is where you create a resource, and this is where you see homepage. If you click here, you'll be come to homepage. This is where you see dashboards, where you can create some shortcuts, and this is where you'll see all services related to Azure. And these are all favorites that if you want to just mark as a favorite, you can. And this is a main search bar where you can search stuff. And this is directory. If you have multiple directories, you can switch from here. And notifications, when you're creating anything in Azure, so this is where you'll get a notification, whether it's created, failed, or other stuff. If you need any support from Microsoft, this is where you click and you create a support ticket. And this is your account information, and that's it, we finished. So now let's create a virtual machine. So our idea is to simply build that environment, right? So whatever I've shown, it's a small project. Our idea is to create this project. So this project includes what topics? This need a resource group, and then this need a VM and a virtual network, and also it need 3 disks, 3 managed disks, and it need 1 storage account, and then one NSG. So, and these are all required, one public IP address and one DNS, Azure DNS. So these are all the components. Now that I have already seen these components, I remember each of these. So let's create these one by one. Okay. So first we need to start with the, this main container, because this is a resource group. Inside this, we have all these, right? First we need to create a resource group. Without resource group, you cannot create, actually, to speak. So you can do search simply resource group. You get a resource group. You create some resource group. And then give some name. And choose, this is where you choose a region where you want to create and also. So this basically, if you choose a region here, this will actually store all the metadata of this resource group. Because if you remember, I told resource group is a logical container. So when it's a logical container, what is the point of choosing region is a question I heard sometimes. So this basically will only store metadata information, only configuration related information. So let's choose South India, which is closer to me. So, and tags, we'll cover these later. I'm just creating this resource group for now. And I have my resource group now. The next thing what we can do here is a virtual network, because next container, if you remember, we have a virtual network. So let's create a virtual network now. So give some, choose the resource group that we have just created and give some name. And the region, let's go with, let's go with some different region. Let's go with East Asia, which is in Hong Kong, which is also comparatively near. So this is where we have discussed about IP addresses, right? If you see an IP starting with 10.0, it's most likely a private IP is what I say. And also we have seen ranges. So if you see /16, you will see the range is almost, it provides, this range will provide 65,536 IPs. And inside it, you have some subnet. This is actually, this VNet is a main thing. VNet is a main thing. Inside a VNet, you can have multiple subnets. Let's say you have 65,000 IPs. Those 65,000 can be divided into how many ever number of parts that you want. Here in this case, we have divided it to 256. This /24 actually 256. Can you please go on mute? And then we have security. This is something we'll cover it later. And I'm creating virtual network now. Now that I have these two, I have resource group, I have my virtual network, these two. This one and this one is done. And now let us create a virtual machine. Anyone has any other questions? Sorry, we are actually running out of time. Probably if I get a chance tomorrow, Monday, I will also cover. You can, I think you can join for first 3 sessions. As I spoke to, Career guys. First 3 sessions you can join, and you can, because in case if you still feel that you did not understand the context, you did not understand what you have learned here, so feel free to join next session as well. That is going to be there. We are going to see more into, because I had to give some demo. I have to give some basics, so which took some time, and also clarify doubts. Next session we are going to completely focus on Azure stuff. So you can join next one on Monday as well. So Career guys, we are going to help you with the timings. So now I have my virtual network as well. So now let's search for virtual machine and create it. So yeah, so I am creating virtual machine. So here I have to select my resource group because I already created one, right? So let's choose a demo, give some name. This name will be created inside a guest OS. So, and choose a region where your VNet is actually hosted, because VNet is a region specific service. And you can choose any of these operating systems, starting Windows 10, Windows servers, and Linux servers. I am choosing Windows Server 2019, and this is where you have some sizes. So let's see the sizes. So Azure provides a lot of predefined sizes. When I say predefined sizes, you do not have an option to set the exact, I need a certain number of CPUs, I need certain amount of RAM. This is something not possible. These are all general sizes. you can choose based on your requirement. In case if you need 2 GB for 2 ECPs, 4 GB RAM, you can select any one out of these three, and out of these. So based on your requirement, there are a lot of sizes, lot of VM sizes available. Based on your requirement, you can actually pick any one. So if you want to know more about these series, what are these series all about? Each series has its own significance. I'm going to cover this stuff in a next Monday. About a complete virtual machine, we are going to cover in detail on Monday. And if you look at the cost of this, so you have a cost. So based on the size that you select, you have some cost. Starting from 769, you are going somewhere up to 27,000. So for 27,000, you have 8 VCPs and 32 GB RAM. So based on the size that you select, you will be actually charged. So I'm going to select some basic one, which is charging me. Let's go with this basic one, 7,000 rupees. That is per hour. This is per month. We need to give some new credentials, because once the VM is created, to log into the VM, so you need to give some credentials. Any other doubts that you guys have while we are doing this lab? So this is where you select the disk. This is only talking about OS disk, but our requirement is to create 2 data disks also. So this is where you can create a data disk, create an attached data disk. So I'm creating one data disk. So you can select a size also for here. I'm going with a smaller one for now. And one disk is done, and another disk also I'm creating a smaller one. So our requirement is fulfilled here. So we have created 2 disks, and we also have a OS disk now. So I'll go to networking, and this is where your VNet is already selected, and your public IP address is also a requirement. So we are selected it, and NSG is something is also a requirement. We are selecting NSG, and we are allowing only 3389, which is a RDP port, so that only the request that is coming from internet only with RDP 3389 can communicate to VM. So any other request will not be able to communicate to VM. So these are all not part of a project. So let us go ahead and create it. So we will have our VM ready with all components that are required. So here you're going to see, I told you sometime back. So on hourly basis, you will be charged like less than 10 rupees, right? So if you look at this one, you're charging, they're charging only 10 rupees per an hour. So for your information, Azure does not charge you on a daily basis. Let's say even if you use 1 hour, you'll be charged for 1 day. That's not going to happen. This is going to charge on hourly basis. So for first 1 hour, you will be charged this rupee. In the next 1 hour, you will be charged. So if you create a VM and use it for 1 hour and close it before 1 hour, delete it before 1 hour, you're only paying only 10 rupees for the VM. So which is very less amount compared to any other on premises specifically. So our VM is being created. While the VM is being created, I just want to show a couple of things because it takes about a minute, a few. So weightage, certification stuff. So I said we are going to have these topics: identity, governance, administration, and virtual network, intersite, and all these stuffs I have already shared in a course outline. You'll have each details of each of these module. But the weightage is important. So the weightage looks like this. For identity and governance, you have 15 to 20%. For implement and manage storage, you have 10 to 15%. And for compute, you have 25 to 30. And for virtual networking, you have 30 to 35. These two are important. Compute, virtual machine, networking, storage, and Kubernetes, these are really important. Backup, again, you have 10 to 15%. So higher the weightage you see, more number of questions you're expected to get. And exam, how the questions looks like in the exam. So that is also, I just want to give you some overview on this. So your question look like this, a repeated scenario where you will be asked for yes or no. So there will be a statement given, you'll be asked for so yes or no. And another type of question, single answer, multiple choice question, where there will be a question, a scenario will be given, you need to select one option out of it. And multiple answer choice, where you need to answer multiple choices. Again, a scenario will be given and asked to. And again, drag and place. So you will be given a scenario, you will be given these options, you have to drag and place in these options. And the exam delivery, so you can schedule exam either at a local center or at a home. At your home also you can sit and write online, but this to write at home, you need to test your computer to they will, I mean, there is a tool that you need to run, and that will check if there are any virus, something like that. And also your room has to be very clean, no cameras, nothing like that. They will completely see, so it is going to be completely webcasting, so they are going to monitor you for entire 3 hours. And this is private access, something large organizations they will do. So these two specifically we use it. As I promised, I said I will show you the discount part, right? So I will also, although we are running out of time, I will try to show that discount part as well. Okay, so we are here AZ100. So this is the one I am talking about. So if you schedule under this, so this one is eligible for this. If you schedule under this, you are only paying 15 USD, which is very less, less than 2,000 rupees. So okay, in US I think it is changed 165 USD now. Sorry for that. I said 150, but it's 165 now in US. Now let's jump back to our portal. So by now our VM should be ready in less than few minutes. So I have my VM, and I also have all the services. Basically, we have implemented an architecture that exactly look like this. So this is a typical very smaller one, but if you have to, so it can go to very complex, a bigger one like this, where you need a multiple components involved. Here you can see 1, 2, 3 virtual machines and NSGs and gateways. There are a lot of, so by at the end of the course, end of this course, we are actually by the, I mean, while we are going to end of this course, we will do these kind of setups. I think more than 10, 15 projects kind like this we will do. Okay. So that's just for your information. Yeah, so if you want to connect to VM, so all you can do, connect here. You have option to connect by RDP. So your file, a file will be downloaded to you, so you can directly use that file. Where is it? Is it downloaded? I think it's downloaded, I guess. Yeah, so with that we are done. Okay, 1 second guys. Even if it's not downloaded, so what we can do, simply copy this IP address and use RDP. I think it's downloaded now. And you have to give credentials, whatever credentials that you have given earlier. So you have to enter those credentials to log into the machine. So that's simple. So on Monday, you're going to see more about this. For now, yes, we are done with this thing. So this course is for 30 hours. 30 hours includes everything, all modules and theory demonstration. At the end of the course, I will also share some documentation, some notes that I myself prepared, which is around, which will be about 100 pages. I will share those notes, and I will also share the detailed documentation for for labs also. So we will do practical labs in the session itself, and also I will share some documentation for labs to you to do homework yourself, to practice yourself later, and also we'll share some practice questions. These are all, and also I think recording will be provided by Kerry Righty, my colleagues, and this is all. And the training will be between 6:30 to 7:30. It can extend 15-20 minutes, maybe 7:45, 8 o'clock max. So yeah, that is about this course. In case if you do not have any questions, any further questions, probably we can wind up.
Shankar, you said one of the slide you'll discuss at the end of the session.
So that's really nice. Thanks for reminder, because as we are running out of some time, so I had, yeah, this is the slide I said we'll discuss later. So as we have discussed, so what once you finish this course and do a certification, and once you get into a job, Azure administrator job. So I mean, basically, if you finish a certification, this is the role you will be worked in. So this cloud administrator role, you most likely will work. When cloud is a general term, but in a cloud you might be working as a Azure administrator role. So in Azure Administrator, what does Azure Administrator do is, so Azure Administrator will have some deep understanding in IT lifecycle. When I say IT lifecycle, networking, storage, and then compute. These are the three resources an IT administrator, a cloud administrator will have some complete knowledge into. And a cloud administrator will take requirements from customers. Let's say a requirement can be something like a project that I have shown you, small project. So a requirement will be given to you, and you will be asked to create a similar setup in the Azure. So all we have done is we have seen a requirement, what are all the components involved. We have created a VM with all those components. It is as simple as that. And basically, to do the job, a cloud administrator will use Azure portal initially. So most likely a person who is actually slowly transitioning to Azure, he will completely use Azure portal. But as and when he gets some experience and exposure into Azure, we'll start using PowerShell and CLI. So PowerShell and CLI is initially you do not use much, but although you do not use, in a next Monday, I'm going to give a complete from scratch demonstration on PowerShell and command line. How you can, even if you do not know, how you can actually start learning PowerShell and CLI. I'm going to cover on Monday. So, but initially you will most likely use Azure portal. And finally, a successful administrator, cloud administrator, start this role with experience of operating systems, virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage switches. So if you have some knowledge on these areas, and if you are able to, if you have some knowledge in these areas, you will definitely be successful in the cloud administrator role, is what it means. Yep, this is a basic role of a cloud administrator. So in case you guys have any questions on this front?
Shankar, this is Srikaran. So coming to lab session, so how do we do that? So we are going to be logging into the Azure portal, and from there we have to work on it, or do we have any other possibilities?
That's a good question. So first of all, in a presentation, I am going to share my screen, and I am going to do all the stuff. I'm going to show you each and everything. But at the same time, I will actually explain about how to create a free account. So because if you can create a free account for 28 days, you will get around, as I said, 14,400, 500 credits. So with a free account in Azure, you will do all most of the services. Let's say there is something that you cannot do with a free account, then we will do in my accounts. Because for me to accommodate to all these, let's say 20, 30 people who joins, for me to accommodate for everyone is really difficult. But I'm going to share my screen and do all this stuff. And I'm going to show you how to create a free account. You guys can create a free account. All you have to have is a credit card. If you have a credit card, if you're in US, debit card also works. And you will not be charged much, only 2 rupees for verification, that's it. And you will not be charged even after a month. So until you upgrade, you will not be charged for even a single rupee. So you don't have to worry about that. You can create a free account and you can learn along with me. While I'm doing, you can also do it. So that's my suggestion. But in case if you want to learn from me, so I am anyways going to show you everything in a screen share. So, and also you will have this recording, so you can watch the recording again and again as well. And also another thing I'm going to provide detailed lab instructions. So even let's say you cannot get a subscription today, and you think you can get it tomorrow, you have all the instructions with you. Even if you want to do it, you can do it. So I'm going to give you all resources, not only just training, but also all resources that are required for you.
Okay, and one more thing is like in the tools, so that the cloud tools you use, I say that there is a mobile app related, right? So Azure.
Correct. Yeah.
So all these lab sessions can be, we can do it from mobile as well, or do we need a laptop or the desktop?
No, you cannot do it from mobile. So I would strongly recommend you to use laptop when you join a training, because there are certain, you cannot do things from mobile. In a mobile, only limited things. When I say you have a virtual machine, only stop you can do it. You cannot do much in a mobile. That is only, let's say, all of a sudden you went out of home, but you have some VM running in Azure. So by the time you come back, you will be billed some rupees, right? To save some cost, simply you go and you use the mobile app and directly stop your VM from there. stop the VM from there. So that is a flexibility Microsoft is going to provide you, but you cannot manage it from Azure mobile app. So you must have you must have a laptop connected for the session.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If you do not have any other questions, I think we can wind up. It's already too late. So sorry. Yeah. Do we have anyone from Kerry Wrighty? Lakshmi? Lakshmi, Vijaya? Anyone? Anyone there? I think we can wind up. If you guys have any doubts, questions, queries, I hope you already have contacts of Kerry Wrighty. You can call them up and they will sort out. The next session is on Monday, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. predominantly, but it can be extended to 15-20 minutes because the questions, various questions that I may get. So, but by 8 o'clock it will be finished for sure. 6:30 to 7:30 is what is defined, and the course is about 40 days. 40 days. Including Saturdays, Sundays, which can have somewhere around 28 to 29 days, weekdays. So in case if we miss any weekday because of any reasons, I may ask you to attend on a Saturday also to cover the course. So do not miss any course. You are going to learn a lot of things. Yeah. And trust me, you'll get a very nice opportunity.
Thank you.
We need to use
So
the
regular sessions also will be from morning only, right? So 6:30 to 7.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
yes, every day, every Saturday, Sunday morning, and Monday also you can join, because today I did not get much chance to actually show you. Yeah, although we have actually created one environment based on a project, but on Monday we are going to see little more in detail, more practical. We are going to see on Monday from here onwards, because first demo I have to give some basics to guys. Yeah. In case when you have any doubts, if you feel that I'm going a little speed, you can also let me know, because going forward I'll also take your feedbacks, and in case if you have anything as such, we'll implement them. Yep. I want you guys to learn and grow. That's the agenda here. Yep. Okay, so in case if we do not have anything, I think we can wind up. So let's call it a meeting.
Is this
Thank you guys.
on
Yeah.
Monday?
Someone is asking. Sorry.
Is this the same URL we need to log in on Monday?
You need to get in touch with Kerry Wrighty. They will share a new. You can call them up. They will give you a new link for Monday session. So this session is, as this is recorded, it is also available on YouTube. In case if any of your friends want to watch it, you can actually share it with them. And on Monday you will get a new link, if I am not wrong. But you need to check with Kerry Wrighty. So you can just call them up. They will give you the new link. They will discuss with you on further stuff.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your time. Yep. Bye bye. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Stay safe.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Ma'am,